Welcome to the 2021 Virtual Acadiana Beef Cattle Producers Field Day. My name is Guillermo Scaglia, and today I will be discussing mineral nutrition in beef cattle. Before we move on, please look at this picture. There is something wrong with it, something that we should not do if we want an efficient use of minerals. Think about it. I will come back to it later in this talk. Minerals and nutrients that can be divided mainly in two groups. Macrominerals, requiring greater quantities and include calcium, chlorine, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and sulfur. The second group is the microminerals, or trace minerals. They are required in very small amounts and include cobalt, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, and zinc. There are two other minerals, chromium and nickel, that are required in even small quantities. However, it needs to be noted that under normal production conditions, they should not cause any concerns. Animals have requirements for these minerals, and these requirements are different depending on age or growing phase and on physiological status. The slide shows requirements for calves and cows. If we look at the requirements of microminerals, we can see the requirements for them are increasing in stressed calves compared with non-stressed animals. Also, lactating cows have a greater requirements than dry gestating cows. In the case of trace minerals, dietary requirements are different, mainly for stressed calves. However, cows, regardless of their physiological stage, have the same needs. Why are minerals important? The clear reason is that several of them are involved in major processes dealing with growth, bone and muscle development, for example, but also in gestation, fertility, and milk production in productive females. Other factors that are also affected by mineral deficiencies include appetite, hair coat, skin health, and disease resistance. As we can see, one mineral or the other are involved in major processes that have an impact on production, hence their importance. Which are the sources of minerals? Let's begin with forages, which are the basal diet for the beef cattle herd. When we mention forages, we mean standing forages or any type of conserved forages. There are several factors that can affect mineral concentration in forages. We will discuss them in the next few slides. The first one is plant species. In fertilized pasture, calcium and phosphorus are usually adequate. However, legumes and grasses differ. Legumes, for example clovers, alfalfa, have greater concentration of calcium, potassium, magnesium, copper, zinc, iron, and cobalt, while grasses have greater concentration of manganese and molybdenum. As you know, we have cool and warm season grasses. There are also differences between them. Cool season grasses are usually deficient in copper, selenium, and cobalt, marginally deficient in phosphorus, magnesium, and zinc, and inadequate in iron, manganese, and potassium. As well as for cool season grasses, warm season pastures are deficient in copper, selenium, salt, and cobalt, marginally deficient in calcium, zinc, and phosphorus, while potassium, magnesium, iron, and manganese are adequate. A second factor affecting mineral concentration in forages is soil characteristics and fertility. The mineral profile of forages are usually related to the availability in the soil of minerals for plant absorption. The graph depicts the effect of soil pH on mineral availability. As it can be observed, cobalt, for example, is much more available at low soil pH compared with neutral pH. On the other hand, copper, for example, has a similar concentration regardless of soil pH. The third factor is plant maturity. As can be observed in the figure, minerals are represented by the ash fraction of the chemical analysis. Ash should be between 8 to 13% in the forage analysis. As it refers to plant growth stage, there is a greater concentration of minerals when the plant is immature and growing, with a sharp decrease as plant matures. A final factor affecting the variability of mineral content is forage type, meaning pasture or standing forage versus hay versus silage. In general, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur concentration in pastures, standing forage, are greater than in hay or silage. Calcium and magnesium are greater in grass and mostly grass silages. Calcium and sulfur are greater in pasture and hay legumes compared to silage. Another source of minerals for beef cattle is drinking water. Depending on the water system that you have in your farm, mineral concentrations can vary widely. It is always useful to have an idea of the water quality you're offering to the animals. The advice is to have an analysis conducted every 2 to 3 years and do it immediately if there is a change in the source of water. They need to drink a lot of it, especially during summer, and any lack of it or poor quality can seriously impact animal performance, growth, reproduction, any of the production processes. Remember that water is the single most important nutrient in beef cattle production. This slide and the next one are just to give you an idea of concentration of salts or some minerals in water that can affect animal performance. Whenever you have the water analysis, check these values to make sure that you are providing the much needed water quality. These tables show the impact of sulfur and nitrogen forms in water quality. In the case of sulfur compounds, young animals are more susceptible than adult cattle because the maximum recommended levels of sulfate and sulfate sulfur are lower in young cattle. For nitrous and nitrogen, the impact is similar regardless of age. Unfortunately, it's not just about salts, sulfur, or nitrogen. Many minerals can have a negative impact on your animals. This table shows the maximum levels that can be present in water for several of them. Again, the only way to find out if the water provided is drinkable is a chemical analysis. Keep these few tables handy so that you can compare the lab results of the water you offer to cattle with maximum levels recommended for the different elements or chemical forms. Finally, the type of supplement, assuming you supplement cattle at some point during the year, like grains or byproducts of corn, soybean, cotton, or rice industry, is also a source of minerals. As for forages, not all supplements are created equal, and the concentration of nutrients in them differs widely. In this table, two of the most common pastures in Louisiana, Bermuda grass and Bahia grass, as well as Bahia grass grain, are presented together with corn, cracked corn in this case, and several other byproducts of the cotton, corn, and soybean industries. Calcium is greater in forages compared to all supplements except for soybean hulls. Except for cottonseed hulls, phosphorus is in greater concentration in supplements. Due to the industry process from where they are obtained, corn gluten feed, cottonseed meal, and dry distillers grains are greater in sulfur than the rest of the feedstuff represented in the table. Dry distillers grains have a greater concentration of most minerals, while soybean hulls are very similar to the forages in terms of concentration of macrominerals. One last comment deals with vitamins. Vitamin A is one of the three vitamins, D and E are the other two, that will usually be added to mineral mixes or blocks. Makes sense since cattle have dietary requirements for them. This means they cannot be synthesized by the animal body or by ruminant microbes. Ruminant microbes synthesize all other vitamins which are then used by the animal. These include vitamin B12. The only dietary requirement for vitamin B12 is cobalt, a trace mineral, which makes up the core of the vitamin B12 structure. The big issue is that it is very difficult to detect a trace mineral deficiency. Some minerals can be stored in different parts of the body. Copper, for example, can be stored in the liver if available in amounts greater than the dietary requirement. These stored minerals can be mobilized from the organs and used later when there is a dietary deficiency. However, this is not a permanent solution. This graph shows that if trace minerals intake decreases with time, then several processes are gradually affected. Immunity will be the first, then growth and fertility will be affected, and it is not until later that actually clinical signs can be observed and you realize that your cattle have a mineral deficiency. By then, the immune system and other developmental processes have been affected. Trying to put all together, we know that soil concentration of minerals can affect their concentration in the plant. Plant factors and weather also affect. Supplementation then comes to play, not just the supplement, corn or soybean hulls, that you use, but also the mineral supplementation program that you decide to use in your farm. All this will impact blood and tissue levels. Now, let me back up to supplementation levels. It is not just enough to read a label and see that the minerals are present. We need to know their bioavailability. For example, zinc sulfate is 36% zinc, and its bioavailability is 100%, meaning that all those 36 units are available for the animal. Then we have zinc carbonate, another source of zinc, which is 56% zinc, much more than the zinc sulfate. However, only 60% of it is available. Hence, less zinc from zinc carbonate is available when compared to zinc sulfate, 33.6 versus 36 respectively. Not much of a difference, but look at copper sources. Copper oxide has 75% copper, but only 15% of it is available. Bioavailability then refers to the absorption and utilization of the mineral and depends upon various digestive tract interactions, mineral solubility, and digestive tract pH. Interaction in the digestive tract exists mainly in the rumen and in the small intestine, where there might be interactions with other minerals or molecules affecting absorption sites. Based on the chemical structure, the bioavailability of the mineral form is in general lowest for oxides and increases for carbonates, sulfates, chlorides, proteinates, and amino acid complexes. The exception of oxides are magnesium and zinc oxide, which have relatively good availability. So it is not just important that the minerals are present in the diet, but also their bioavailability and the possible antagonisms between them. This figure denotes all the possible interactions that occur among and between minerals. Let's see an example. Iron, if it is present in large enough concentration, it can affect the absorption of copper and zinc. This type of interaction, antagonist, can be also seen among other minerals. So it is not just a bioavailability of the mineral or minerals, but also all the possible interactions among them. Which are the sources of trace minerals that are available? Looking clockwise at this slide, the sources are blocks of a particular mineral, sulfur or cobalt, for example, trace mineral blocks, loose mineral mix, or injectable minerals. This table summarizes some of the main advantages of each of the trace mineral sources. As you can see, the blocks, trace mineral block, and the yellow or blue blocks have not many advantages. The loose trace mineral mix have several advantages, including the flexibility of use, formulation, and consumption. Injectable minerals are a guarantee for delivery of a defined amount of certain trace mineral, something that cannot be achieved with any other sources, giving the chance to provide an immediate response to a deficiency. Very importantly, it is also a one-time cost. All the sources have also disadvantages, some of which are listed in this table. At the end of the day, it is you who will need to decide what is needed, what you can afford, what can be done. Take a good look at this slide and the previous one. These are guidelines to help you in this decision. This is just a simple example of a mineral mix for lactating cows. This does not mean that it can solve all possible issues, so again, this is just an example. Consult your agent, veterinarian, and/or representative to find out what you need to use to supplement your cattle. Some common concerns with deficit or excess of certain minerals are listed in this table. Grass tetany can be very common in lactating cows grazing large annual ryegrass, for example. Usually, it can be prevented by feeding high magnesium minerals. Polio is caused by lack of thiamine, which is a B vitamin. When there is a high sulfur in the diet, thiamine synthesis is affected. This sulfur may be part of the supplement used or from the water animals are drinking. Ruminant microorganisms are extremely important for feedstuff fermentation. They can synthesize their own protein or so-called microbial protein, which is later degraded and used by the animal. Ruminant microbes require sulfur mainly for the synthesis of a couple of amino acids that contain this mineral. Cobalt is needed for the synthesis of vitamin B12. High concentrate diets are high in grains, which are low in calcium and potassium, so these minerals are supplemented. Finally, sulfur is needed in the detoxification of prussic acid, so animals grazing sorghums, for example, have an increased demand of this mineral. It needs to be added that these forages are low in sulfur too. We also need to know that the calcium to phosphorus ratio in most mineral mixes should be 2:1 to 4:1, and never less than 1:1. Phosphorus supplementation may not be needed when pastures are fertilized with poultry litter, something that it might be common in some regions of the state more than others. Poultry litter is high in phosphorus, which becomes available in the soil, giving the plants a high chance of absorbing considerable amounts of it. Some byproducts are also high in phosphorus, such as cotton and corn byproducts, as we previously saw a few minutes ago. Phosphorus supplementation may not be needed when feeding high phosphorus feeds, for example, cottonseed meal, distilled grains, or corn gluten feed. Finally, salt, sodium chloride, is not stored in the body, so should be supplied daily. Animals crave for salt. A mineral mix should contain 15 to 20% salt. In the next few slides, I wanted to reflect the most common comments that nutritionists from around the country have received, just maybe to shed some light on common belief. Is the mineral concentration in forages important? Yes and no. Why? Because at the end of the day, the bioavailability of each of them and possible antagonisms are the main issues. Calcium and magnesium, as we see in the table, have low bioavailability. However, the rest are much higher. On the other hand, trace minerals absorption from pastures is very low. It has been estimated that only 5% of the copper in forages is absorbed, and that if there is no high concentration of any antagonism such as sulfur. Another question, what is the optimal concentration of a given mineral? You need really to look at the tag and also know what your cattle dietary requirements are. For example, there are two supplements. Supplement 1 has 3,000 milligrams of copper per kilogram, while supplement 2 has 1,000 milligrams of copper per kilogram. The copper dietary requirement for the cow is 150 milligrams of copper. Assuming a supplement intake of 2.5 ounces, then the cow consumes 210 milligrams and 70 milligrams of copper with supplement 1 and 2 respectively. So you need to buy supplement 1 since it is the one providing enough copper. A similar example is described below. I can't reinforce the issue enough, but always read the tag. You will find the guarantee analysis of the supplement with all minerals listed, in some cases minimum and maximum concentration, calcium and salt for example, or minimum concentration. Then you can read the sources of the minerals, the chemical composition. Here is where you will find if their supplement are oxides or sulfates. Remember that depending on their chemical structure, their bioavailability is different. Finally, the caution and warning statements. Please read these. Usually, feeding directions are included under caution. These labels came in different ways, but in general you will find all the information mentioned before. You have a health issue with your cattle. Is it a mineral deficiency? Even though it can be, please make sure that it is not energy or protein deficiency first. These are the two nutrients that normally can be deficient in beef cattle production. Then look for another culprit that might be very well a mineral deficiency or toxicity. We'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. The mineral mix block, the redder the better. No, iron is added to the mineral supplements to serve as a coloring agent. That is why the red color. The problem is that it can be antagonistic with copper, zinc, and manganese. So a redder mineral mix or block may be a sign of problems. If calves are consuming milk from the dam, can they be deficient in minerals? Yes. Cow's milk provides macrominerals, but it is deficient in trace minerals. Cows rely on their liver stores of microminerals during early life, and these stores are not enough for a long period of time. So they will benefit from a mineral supplementation program, no questions about that. Is trace mineral salt blocks an effective free choice mineral supplement for grazing beef cattle? No. Trace mineral salt or blocks are high in salt, usually more than 95%, but low in trace minerals. It is highly recommended to provide cattle with year-round access to a complete free choice mineral supplement rather than trace minerals salt. More comments or questions. I can't get cows to eat minerals, or they eat it like candy and won't stop. The phrase I can't get cows to eat minerals might be palatability issues due to blocks, too humid, or differences in composition or smell if switching minerals, among other possible issues. The location of the feeder versus salt blocks if used is also important. Cattle crave for salt, sodium chloride, so they will prefer a salt block rather than the mineral mix if provided separately. Don't do that. Positioning the mineral feeder close to a water source might be a good idea to start them on a mineral supplement, but once they start consuming it, move it away from the water. Don't let the feeder go empty. If they clean the feeder and it is empty for some time, a day or more, they will come back and clean it once you put again. So don't let it run on empty and keep putting out. Cattle will stabilize intake after a few days. Believe me, you should have a feeder per every 30-40 animals, depending on size of the pasture too. Should I use trace minerals in inorganic or organic chelates form? Chelate minerals or organic minerals are complex to protein or amino acids or natural forms such as yeast-based minerals. Inorganic minerals are cheaper but not absorb as effectively as chelated minerals. Also, chelates or organic minerals have the highest bioavailability, so if you can afford them, they are highly recommended, if not year-round, at least in some demanding moments of the year. Do I need to feed minerals year-round? Yes, absolutely. There are changes in requirements throughout the year, and the lack of certain minerals at certain point of the production cycle may limit production. To conclude this presentation, a few tips. Take measures to assess your herd mineral status. Start with dietary nutrient analysis, including water, estimate pregnancy rate, calving distribution, calf health, and if there is a chance, then do blood and liver tissue analysis. If all parameters are in excellent shape, you may have a good nutritional program in place. Position the mineral source close to normal lanes of travel within pastures. As I mentioned before, once they are used to the mineral, put it away from the water. Use minerals to help with grazing distribution across the pasture. By moving the mineral feeder around, you would be sure that cattle will graze the pasture more evenly. One mineral feeder per 40 mature animals should suffice. Remember the picture from the first slide? So what is wrong? The answer is minerals must be covered. Rainfall can have a negative effect on nutrient concentration, taste, among other factors. Use salt, sodium chloride, to adjust for intake. Add more salt if you want them to eat less, and vice versa. However, before doing this, first try to relocate the mineral feeder. It is easier, and you may accomplish the same effect. Minerals in loose form versus block. Loose form is usually easier for cattle to consume than blocks. It is also common to have more even intake. Not all animals will consume the same amount, and that is a reality. Some will eat more than others, and probably nothing you can do about it. A final advice is not to risk the financial consequences of an inadequate mineral program. A good quality, well-balanced free choice mineral will cost around $20 per bag. The price for retail minerals ranges from $20 to $50 per bag or more in some cases. Based on a typical feeding rate of 4 ounces per head per day, a mineral costing $22 per bag will cost annually $40.50. A $50 bag of mineral will cost $91.25 annually. Find what your cattle need, pencil out what is more convenient for you, and create a mineral program for your herd. It will pay off. Thanks for your attention.